Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Raw Reaction series. But for the first ever intentional watch along, I say intentional because there was a show where I accidentally watched along to Dynamo Zagreb knocking out Spurs in the Europa League, and that was an amazing experience. I don't imagine this will have the same kind of highs as that. But hopefully it's going to be an enjoyable 90 minutes or so. This is our first ever one, and it is most likely going to be bloody awful. So just bear with that, because you've got to think there's three guys in different parts of the world trying to get a stream aligned into the right place. There's going to be a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning as we try and work out how we do that. Because, of course, this is being streamed on the Arsenal website, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. We don't know exactly how it's going to be running and how it's going to work. It may be absolutely awful. My stream might buffer. Owen's stream might buffer. We have not got a clue. So hopefully you just enjoy a chat, because the aim of this is not for this to be us commentating over the top of the game, to be honest. Obviously, we're going to be telling you little things that are happening and big things, but we want this to be kind of a bit of a chat whilst watching the game, is basically what this is going to be. I am joined by two fantastic people, as I've already said. First of all, Drew, how you doing, mate? Are you well? Are you good? You good, son? I'm going to talk so you can unmute yourself. Here we go. This is our panda. There you are.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, no work today. Just taking it easy. Excited to watch the match. Also, I apologize in advance. Whenever I watch matches, I'm like dead silent because I'm observing everything. I'm analyzing everything, so I might not say much for 90 minutes of this. So
can you imagine doing this in real life? You got like Guy Mowbray commentating, and he goes, "So what do you think, Drew?" Just dead silence. Just dead
this
silence.
is the thing. Like, you and I have watched matches before, and how much did I say when we were at O's when you were in New York?
Yes,
I said 6 words during the match. Yeah,
so I did. I visited New York, and where was the place called O's? Did you say?
O'Hanlon's.
And it was the Arsenal-Napoli quarter-final of the Europa League, because then we went through to play Valencia in the semi-final.
Yeah. Mike was there as well.
And then, yes, Mike was there as well. Georgia was there as well. And we did a live podcast from there with two live viewers. How things have changed since then. Thank you ever so much, guys, for tuning in. And you can watch the show. I mean, Abadak says, Abdig Hack. I'm going to shoot. I'm not going to read out the numbers. They might correspond to something. But it says, where can we watch the game? You can watch the game on the Arsenal website, or if you are based abroad, ESPN 3. Is that right, Drew?
Yeah, ESPN 3. Or if you have a normal ESPN cable, you can watch it on just you should not pay extra. You don't need like ESPN Plus or anything like that if you're in the US. So.
Okay. Michael Westney, thank you ever so much for signing up as a new member. Much appreciate the support. We've had a few members sign up over the last week or so that have joined the Discord server as well. They've been welcomed like new family. So it's a very welcoming place. Speaking of being welcomed into a new place, Sambi Lakonga, you may have seen some interesting news dropping over the last hour. And I've just tweeted some news out that I got told that I'm going to reveal my source and everything, so you don't have to worry about the whole ITK stuff. But when we were doing the show for the Arsenal Transfers podcast about an hour ago, some news dropped via Sport Witness, which quoted a magazine in Belgium called Sport Magazine, which is a fairly reliable place for news coming out of Belgium and sport. And they claim that there is a growing hypothesis that Sambi Lakonga would leave on loan this season as a real possibility. So during the show, I did text a few people that wasn't able to get a response back in time for the show to be finished, but I did get a response back from Sasha Tavolieri, who is a very recommendable and reliable Belgian football journalist. And he sent me a voice note which basically explained that the reports about Sambi Lakonga going on loan are at the moment premature. However, there is all the possibility that depending on how he performs in pre-season, he's expected to go on the Florida tour, that he could get sent on loan. So it's basically any report saying he's defo going out on loan right now are not the case, and he is going to be assessed during pre-season. But interestingly, this has obviously received quite a lot of backlash. The replies to the tweet that I put out, Drew, initially were obviously crazy. I remember when I told you when we were prepping for the show, your reaction was very much, what the you-know-what? So how do you feel about it now?
Well, I initially kind of feel like, for me, I kind of, from what I do know about him, I feel like he might be able to settle maybe more quicker than we expect. But I think the caveat for that is we don't know who we're shifting. it seems like Arteta might want to keep Willock. We don't know if he's going to end up leaving the club. We don't know if we're going to be able to shift Torreira or Maitland-Niles. So if we have all these bodies in the team, where's Lokonga going to play? So if anything, it would make sense to loan him out. And despite his strengths, I do think that he's still, like Tavares as well, maybe still a little bit too raw. And I know it'd be a good transition year because we have no Europe, so we probably wouldn't have to play that much. You might be able to adapt 1 year, but the whole point of when you bring in the young players, you want to keep them developing. So if he's not going to play this year, and we can't find him the minutes, we can't shift bodies out, just put him out on loan. But I think, and what Owen brought up in private chat before we went on live, is that I think the key would have to be make sure it'd be a domestic loan if at all possible. That might be one of the cruxes.
What would be the point of sending him on loan unless it was going to be another Premier League club?
My worry would be he would just go right back to Belgium, and I don't. And like that's no disrespect to the Jupiler League, but you want him to transition to life as quickly as possible. So I wouldn't want him to have a continental loan. I'd want him to be in country. I think we could probably all agree with that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one that obviously is going to test the fan base's patience after the whole Saliba situation. Owen, what do you kind of reaction to the news about Lokonga possibly has the option that the club may send him on loan depending on how they see him during pre-season?
Well, look, whilst a player of his profile, a loan move, especially as we said domestically, would probably make sense if he was at Liverpool, if he was at City, if he was at Chelsea. But the fact that I don't think it sort of stands the board, particularly Mikel Arteta and Edu, in good stead, is that this obviously being such a crucial transfer window and so much business needing being done by the end of the window, it sort of springs the question to mind, well, why are you going out and putting so much effort and so much money on the table for a guy who clearly isn't ready? If he needs a loan this early on. Another thing I would say as well is that the only way I can see this being possible in terms of a loan being proposed for Lokonga is that the landscape has changed in terms of the outgoings that we expect to see. We know that both Roma and Arsenal are playing hardball over the future of Granit Xhaka. We're not too sure about Luca Torreira. As you mentioned, Mohamed Elneny, still there's question marks over him, I think, as well. But what I would say to that is it worth jeopardising potentially putting time at Arsenal into the future of Lokonga over somebody who you're just keeping on the books because you can't get the money that you want to shift on at the minute? Lokonga for me has a higher ceiling than probably anybody in our midfield bar Thomas Partey in terms of where he could end up through his natural ability. So for me, I'm sure they're just rumours. Like you always say, take everything with a pinch of salt. Because for me, with the effort that's being put in, with the reputation that this kid's coming in with, and with the lack of options that we have in that position, I'm pretty sure that it would be a silly move for the club to send Lokonga out on loan.
The thing about sending Lokonga out on loan is obviously the same with Saliba. I can see a theory behind it, but the fans overall are not going to react well to the idea. And I have complete understanding of the reasons as to why as well, because you think, especially in midfield, we're so light. Like there's a lack of options in that midfield area. You've got Elneny, Partey, Willock, Aziz, Maitland-Niles right now, although we expect Maitland-Niles to go. Willock, we don't know his future and plays in more of an offensive kind of role. Granit Xhaka we expect to leave as well, of course. We haven't really got an out-and-out number 6. Partey has suggested, there's been suggestions they may play Partey there, but I would be shocked to see him go out. It would just make... Drew, what do you make of kind of the chat about Partey going into a number 6 position? Because I've seen people try to argue the case. I just think it's a waste of talent, to be honest.
No, I mean, you and I have talked about this before when we first signed him. You interviewed Graham. We've both spoken to Graham about Partey before. I just kind of feel like just because a player can do it doesn't mean a player should. I don't know. I just kind of feel like when you have a player like Partey, you want to utilize him to his best possible strengths. And I think when you have that kind of ability in your midfield, you want to maximize it. So no, I wouldn't be happy with him going into a 6th role. I don't think that makes any sense, but I'm not the manager, but that would just be my preference. So no, I'm not. I wouldn't be necessarily a fan of it.
Fair enough. I mean, on my website, for some reason, it's buffering, which is great. I'm loving the fact that this is all buffering now. I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping that it will sort itself out. I'm also going to try and get it up on my phone because I'm assuming my phone may actually be a bit better than using the laptop. We are now a minute away from kickoff. I'm going to try and get the timer in line with how it works. But one of the players that's missing from the squad, Owen, is Nun Tavaj. Of course, we practiced our pronunciations over on the Gooners pod the other day. It was great. What do you make of him not being included just yet?
I find it quite strange, to be honest with you, because with the amount of players that we have still on holiday at the minute following the European Championships, I wouldn't say we're stuck in that position, but we're, as you can see from the lineup today, is someone in say Kolasinac that apparently doesn't really have a future at the club. If we're acknowledging all signs, you think it would probably best to start to settle Nuno in. It's what makes it slightly strange for me is it obviously isn't an injury concern or something like that, because he was in full training with the squad, as we've seen from the behind the scenes footage and some of the footage pre-game here. So it's slightly strange whether Drew made the point pre-pod that potentially they could be saving him for the Orlando trip as well, because I'm not sure how ready Kieran Tierney's going to be for that either. So look, it's the new toy syndrome. As fans, we get a new toy and we want to see it straight away. Well, I think sometimes we just have to have a little bit of patience and remember as well that this is somebody who has come in with his reputation causing somewhat concern. So I think we'll have to sort of sit back, wait and see how it pans out.
Has yours kicked off yet, Owen? Because I'm at the moment watching them walk out onto the pitch right now.
They're just walking out onto the pitch on mine too, yeah.
You can tell that this isn't an official game, because if it was, they'd be getting in so much trouble for not kicking off dead on 6 o'clock as the kickoff is supposed to be. Quite a few fans there. Great to see fans back in the ground, isn't it? I mean, that's just seeing throughout the Euros and then now is going to be great next season.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that if one thing that especially the final, I think, and the semi-final as well of the Euros showed that it actually has quite an effect on the performance and quality that we see on the pitch from both sides. That energy just obviously transpires, and I think, as I say, one thing over the last 18 months that has been made completely clear is that football without fans is nothing.
Have you seen who's in goal for Hibernian?
Matt Macy.
Matt Macy is the goalkeeper for Hibs. Of course, he did leave us in the summer and is now featuring for Hibs. We are seconds away from kickoff, so you'll be able to line up your streams with ours. If you want to do that, basically, you just look at the timer on our screen. It hasn't kicked off yet, but you'll then be able to kind of pause your live stream and then restart it when you get to the same number, effectively, because there's usually a delay between YouTube and it going out to you guys. Or you can't do that, and you just choose to not to do that and just watch it and hear us chat. As I said before, we don't really want these to be kind of like a live commentary, because I mean, you could just watch it anywhere. We want this to kind of be a situation where it's a discussion, it's a bit of a chat whilst the game's going on, and we comment on what's going on throughout the matches. It's our first watch along ever. It's completely new. And we'll see how it goes. Taking the knee, good to see. And we're just about to see them kick off any second. I'm hoping that to show it. And we have indeed kicked off. So the timer should be going on the screen. It is indeed. Playing in yellow, Owen. It's good. We get to see the new kit this week. It's been announced. The new home kit will be out by the end of the week, they say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's a little strange watching just how reminiscent it is of the Ajax kit. I think Arsenal kits have always been just completely distinctive and unique, and it's the first time we've really seen it sort of comparable with another big recognisable club. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. I often think you can't really have a big opinion on the kit until you get it in person and start wearing it yourself. So what about the fact that Eddie Nketiah is on the pitch this evening, Tom, and not Fowler and Balogun? Is that maybe the club putting him in the shop window, or is it maybe a sign that Eddie Nketiah may not be going anywhere?
I don't think it is, to be honest, because we've obviously seen Kolasinac start, who we expect also to leave the club before the end of the window. It's arguably an opportunity for those players to put themselves in the window. And you think about the fact that where are they else going to kind of raise their value during this period? And there's always the opportunity where, if nothing actually ends up happening, then we might see them stay at the club. But I think what you'll see is they'll have two teams, effectively. They're going to have your first half team and your second half team. It's not. I saw a big meltdown to the lineup online. There's a big meltdown. And
no.
It's just a little bit, I think, over the top. Is that McGinn on the screen now? He looks very similar to, I assume, his brother at Aston Villa.
That is worth a Google. I'm sure he looks very like him. Tell me this: is Josh Doig?
Josh Doig?
Does he play for Hibs?
He does play for Hibs. I'm just checking if he's actually playing. I'm just getting the Hibs lineup now. Okonkwo's starting in goal for us, by the way. Doig is not starting, and he's not on the bench either. So we didn't play, annoyingly. So there you go. But can anyone tell us in the chat box, is he indeed John McGinn? Is Paul McGinn? Is he John McGinn's brother? Because they do look very, very similar. Apparently, the Hibs website's gone down for those that are watching on there. It's been a very kind of ordinary opening so far. Drew, are you with us? Are you checking how in time you are with us?
No, I'm back. But like for now, so you said the Hibs website's down. ESPN isn't functioning at the moment. Like the stream, so wow. So I'm trying to futz with that to make sure.
Michael Westneat in the chat says try ESPN 3 because it's live for him. So maybe it's a you problem.
No, it could be because I'm having to do it on the ESPN website. I'm not doing it on my TV because then I would be looking at the TV instead of my computer. So
interestingly, what we're seeing on the pitch though is that Arsenal have gone for a 4-4-2, which is not something we're used to seeing. And Nketiah and Aubameyang playing up top. Do you think any kind of indication from these games goes to show what we could do in the upcoming season?
To be honest with you, at this stage, not really. Obviously, the personnel is going to be extremely different come the end of the transfer window in terms of incomings and outgoings. To be honest with you, I think that this could potentially be a system just to accommodate Ainsley Maitland-Niles in midfield as well, just to see how he gets on. He started relatively positive. He's seems to be pulling the trigger quite quick on getting that ball forward into Aubameyang and Willian. So whether that's instructional or whether he's just out to try and impress Mikel Arteta and stake a claim.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I just noticed on my screen. I was talking to Drew about this earlier. The problem with the away kit is that it's not good for green screens. I don't know if you're aware of this. That I'm starting to go a little bit see-through. So I'm lighting it here properly in the room soon at some point. Drew, have you managed to find your stream yet, or are you still struggling? I can see there's a lot of people in the chat box that are struggling to find a stream that's working as well. You're muted, mate.
I know. I'm still struggling. It's still like. Look, I can get onto ESPN fine, but when you press the live play button, nothing plays. It's just there.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, you get to watch along with those in the chat box for us.
Cool.
Me and Owen. Those that are asking in the chat box, I can see people are asking if you could do this with your Red membership. If you had a membership, you had to sign up by midday today to do it. So don't go and buy Red membership like a certain someone, i.e. me, after midday. And then have to go and buy a match day pass. Oh, we're straight. Oh, is this the wrong goal? This is Nketiah running through, and he's missed a one-on-one absolute sitter. Oh, that's going to do nothing for his value. Owen, what did you make? Oh, no.
I mean, do you want to know what? That move, that sequence in total just emulates exactly what Eddie Nketiah is. He's a very hard worker. He's very positive in terms of his pressing game, but he just lacks that clinical edge that Premier League strikers need. And for me, why I've always had that feeling that he maybe doesn't have it to make it at Arsenal. In terms of confidence, it's early in the game. Look, there could be more chances for the kid, but I think that just shows exactly the problem that a lot of people have with Eddie Nketiah.
Drew, when it comes down to like what we've just seen, I don't know if you were able to catch it, but it was a one-on-one. He's nabbed the defender, Hanlon, I think it was, at the back, straight through on goal, really one-on-one with the keeper, just inside the box, finesses it wide past the right-hand post. And do you think that does anything for his, do you think that'll take any millions off his possible transfer fee?
I don't think so, because I don't think anyone's necessarily surprised. And I think Owen kind of summed it up quite well. I don't think anyone ever questions his commitment as a player to the club when he's on the pitch. He does work hard. He's usually one of the hardest workers when he does actually get a start or when he comes to the bench. But his finishing is just abhorrent. Like you can't be to this level, leading the line at this level, and it's just he's so inconsistent. So no, I'm not surprised. I don't think it's necessarily change anything, but you want him to hit those, get those on target in preseason, even if we're not keeping him. He's got to build his confidence. So the fact that he's missed it, I don't think anyone of us can be surprised, really.
Yeah, 100%. If you
See,
are wondering what minute we're on, just quickly, Owen, is that you can check the timer in the middle of your screen. That is the minute that we are currently watching on. Well, me and Owen anyway. Drew is sometime yesterday. He will be catching the game in the highlights tomorrow. Go on, Owen.
No, I was just going to say something that I'm quite interested to see throughout this preseason is what remedy Mikel Arteta has for the lack of a heartbeat in this team. And what I mean by that is, I've said a few times that up until January, I thought that we lacked anyone who created a form of tempo or control in our team. And I thought that we remedied that last season by taking in Martin Odegaard. I think that that's something that he brought. And while he wasn't overly amazing in terms of statistical output through goals or assists, I think what he did provide was a certain rhythm to Arsenal, a composure and an organisation that we absolutely lacked. And I don't think that, I'm not sure whether Emile Smith-Rowe has it in his locker to be the single-handed orchestrator of that sort of tempo, but every team needs one. And I think possibly somebody that could remedy that for us is somebody like a Ruben Neves. So I'm interested to see who it is that Mikel Arteta has deployed to try and take on that role in pre-season.
I mean, when you look at the midfield right now, you've got El Neni and Maitland-Niles playing. Now, the alternative, obviously, is Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka. And Granit Xhaka we're expecting to leave. And it does kind of go to show how kind of lacking in depth our midfield is right now. It's the fact that it goes Partey, Xhaka, and then it is El Neni, Aziz, and Willock are the other options. And you expect us, as you say, to bring in kind of Ruben Neves, or bring in, say, looking like we're going to bring in a Sambi Lokonga, but he could end up going on loan again. So that for me, when you see that, do you think bringing in, say, one with a Ruben Neves is actually enough to bring in during the window?
I don't. I think that something that I think now in all successful teams in modern football have is mobility and high energy. You look at that Liverpool team with Gini Wijnaldum, Fabinho, Jordan Henderson, Oxlade-Chamberlain, whoever. They're all explosive runners and very dynamic. And for me, that's why I'm so frustrated at the fact that we haven't got somebody like a Yves Bissouma coming in when he is so available. Because I think that if you had a midfield three of say a Thomas Partey, Yves Bissouma and Ruben Neves with Emile Smith-Rowe, Saka and Aubameyang in front of him, or Pepe, whoever it is, I think that is very dynamic, very mobile and explosive. And for me, that's the sort of recipe for success in modern football. Like it's only recently started. Like, how many teams 3 years ago were playing with a number 10? Not many. The days of the number 10 seem to be dwindling out, and that's much to the reason of why players like Mesut Ozil has sort of fizzed into the background, and why players like Kevin De Bruyne had to adapt his game and start to have a more energetic output. So for me, yeah, someone like Yves Bissouma is I don't know why the club aren't moving for someone like that.
Just we'll cut across you there, Owen. We saw a ball going into the box. Now, Conco struggled to deal with this. We'll just see on the right-hand side, Hibs number 10. I'm going to quickly check their line up again to learn the names. But Conco tries to come for it, and it just slips through his fingers, which is... I mean, it's his debut for the senior side. I know it's only a pre-season game, but it is the first time he's actually played. Also, I think John messaged in our group chat, it's the first time that a black goalkeeper has ever started a game for Arsenal, which is fantastic. And you're seeing a corner come into the box, and Kolasinac has had to head that away at the back post. But Okonkwo is an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously signed a new contract with us. Drew, I mean, when you look at kind of a player like Okonkwo coming in and looking at kind of the youth system, do you now think that Arsenal are going to go down the route of no more Runnelsons, no more kind of bringing in players for £2 million, but they're going to try and promote from within into those kind of real depth positions in the squad?
I think they might, just because of the homegrown quota. I think it just makes more sense to do it. And that's pretty commonplace for a lot of other clubs around the world as well. There's no point in going out and spending on a backup keeper, especially if you have people question Leno or not, but he's still reliable, barring some freak accident, he's always fit. He's relatively consistent. So I think it just makes sense to it'll help breed and blood a lot of these products as well. So even if they don't stay at the club for long term, even if they get some sort of backup minutes under their belt when you sell them on, you can use that as another avenue for cash revenue as well. So
We've just seen a very nice bit of play from Eddie and Ketia, what it looks like. A fantastic bit of play from him down the left-hand side of the pitch, and he took players on brilliantly. He seems to be able to do all the hard stuff, and it comes to the easy bit, and he can't quite do it.
Yeah, it's much to the same as previous problems that we would have described Joe Willock having, is just that sort of lack of decisiveness and quick decision-making, which is so key at this level. That often, I think, separates the sort of men from the boys in terms of high quality footballers in the Premier League and the modern game is how quick they can make decisions, quick reactions. It's often the small details that show the gulf in quality, and I think Eddie sort of struggles with that. And at this stage in his career, how long are we going to start, or how long are we going to keep calling him a young striker? Do you know what age is Eddie now? He's 21, 22. Yeah. He's got another year of being a young striker, and then he's a fully fledged footballer. So he needs to start ironing those creases out of his game very, very quick, or it could be detrimental to his development and the future of his career.
Yeah, I mean, Arsen's disciple in the chat box has said, first pre-season, guys, we need to relax. I mean, do you think, Drew, that a lot of people put more emphasis on these pre-season games than there actually is?
Yeah, I do. I know. I had to unmute. No, I think they do. Preseason it's literally all about fitness and working out the tactical kinks. It's not about the result. I mean, you could play 6 preseason friendlies, lose all 6, and then go on and win the league. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, you want to see results. You want to see consistency. You want to see players kind of hitting the ground running. But it's especially the first few matches of preseason. It's literally all just about getting your fitness in. If we lose today, I really couldn't care less. I just want to know. I just want to kind of see where we're at with certain players. But the result is irrelevant to me. So yeah, it should be relevant to basically everybody, but it never is. And I get being
people. Do you think it's irrelevant? Do you agree with Drew? Let us know. Sorry, Drew. Go on.
No, I was just saying. I mean, I get that people are competitive and they want to always win every match, but it's preseason. It's fine. We'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
We will be fine. You've heard it here first from Drew.
Worry about everything. You're taking so much crap on Twitter right now. Everybody's just...
Am I?
No, not you, mate. Drew, for saying not to worry and don't worry about the result. That's you know what this fan base are like.
Oh, dearie me, Drew. I mean, people are going for you now. What do you mean, don't worry about pre-season? This is the most important game of the summer. This is more important than that game we had at the weekend. Unbelievable. This is a nice interplay around the edge of the box at the moment. I'm realising, though, how hot this room gets. I mean, I'm going to sort something out. The problem is you can never have any kind of aircon or fan because it just makes too much noise. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. I've had to close the window because the noise outside. I'm actually going to open it now because it's getting ridiculous.
I've got the same problem with my children. Too much noise. That's why I kick them out when this is on.
Don't have kids. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but the timer, it seems slower than the actual game.
Because I'm quite level with the timer on screen, and I think you're probably about 5-10 seconds ahead of me.
Yeah, well, right. I can like kick it up a few seconds if I need to. I feel like I just need to keep caring for it, just keep kicking it up a second or two. You know roughly where we are. This is our first show doing a whole watch along. James S asked an interesting question of where's Aziz? Have any of you two heard anything about the situation of Aziz, where he is injury wise? Nothing. Drew's shaking his head. Owen, I've heard nothing. I'm assuming you haven't either.
No, it is. It's a slightly strange one because he's probably someone out of all those academy graduates or fringe players, whatever you want to call them, that seemed to be on the verge of breaking in this season, and you thought that these games would have been quite big. But look, again, we can only speculate. We don't know whether he is a knock or outside commitments or whatever it is. There seems to be a couple of strange decisions around this one. So maybe it's just a case of that, like Drew said, this is just a case of get out there, run about for 90 minutes and get the fitness up and there's still players absent and stuff. So if he was absent for the entirety of preseason, then you'd be asking questions. But like everybody says, it's the first one, so we can relax for now.
We can relax. Oh, Drew, interesting. We just saw the camera focus on Pablo Mari there. Do you think his role very much now in the team is playing as backup to Gabriel effectively?
I don't know. Even when Gabriel came back and got his fitness back last season, Mari still played in some pretty big matches over him. So I think that place is kind of up for grabs, honestly. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Center back pairing is one that you don't want to rotate too much, especially if you don't need to. We don't have Europe, so you kind of want to stay with that first pair all season long. But I think Gabriel still has work to do. And I think Mari proved to quite a lot of people when he was on it, he was actually quite good. And I think he kind of surprised a few. So we'll see. I think it's kind of up for grabs for me. And there's nothing wrong with it. You want that competition as well. Gabriel's still quite young, so he'll still be here long term, even if he doesn't nail it down full time this season potentially. But it's good competition to have, so I'm fine with it.
Is it slightly strange that Willian is still here when Fabrizio Romano put out a bit of a cryptic statement as to the possibility of him
leaving? He really left it up to the ambiguous, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And I'm slightly disappointed that he's still here.
I mean, what was it? The quote was like, he will 100% leave. 100%. He's definitely leaving. 100% going to leave. And yet, here he is on the first day of preseason playing against him. So that is the Arsenal way, if anything, if you've ever seen one. I don't know. Does it worry? I don't think it worries me. We talked about a little bit about this, of kind of Kolasinac and Nketiah and Bellerin still being at preseason. It doesn't worry me. Like, players play through preseason and they leave. Like, it's not a big deal. Anyone?
You just very abruptly stopped there. I was expecting some sort of follow-up.
I'll raise the tone of my voice at the end of the sentence. And say, don't we?
Yeah, no, look at that, as you say, but what are they supposed to do? Just leave them sitting back at home? I suppose me, as much as anybody, need to chill out and remember that there's still a long, long, long way to go, which I'm sure you're probably not too happy about hearing. You still have probably, about 50 morning shows to do.
Yeah, we're on episode 71 this morning.
Realistically speaking, and I don't know, maybe Drew can speak to this more than me, because where's the only real option? The MLS is probably the most realistic destination for someone like Willian. Who's going to take him on that wage?
I mean, one of the things I hate about MLS is like the way the wages work in MLS is kind of it's wonky. So if they feel like he'll bring in a big enough profile to help the league's profile, they'll make his wage work. They'll be fine. Like, they've afforded more expensive wages than his before. It's just a matter of, what kind of clubs he'll want. And anytime a big European or South American player goes to MLS, it's usually always the same destination. It's a club in LA, it's a club in New York, or it's a club in Florida. Like Inter Miami would make sense, given like the community down there, a little bit of the lifestyle makes sense. So I wouldn't be surprised. And they're a new club trying to build their profile, so that would make sense. But who even knows? I could see it. There's a lot of aging players. Like, I could see David Luiz ending up there as well for a similar reason. But you never know.
Oh, we're literally just after saying how much we want Willian out the door, and he skinned half the pitch and played a lovely little layoff pass to Nelson.
Yeah, he did. Nelson cutting on his right foot across the keeper. Macy makes a good save. Mate, Nelson's a really weird one because he splits the fan base. We'll pause just a second to let this corner come in from Willian. Hands up, ball into the box. And header just goes past the post from Nketiah. A little kind of flick on there. Corners are certainly something that Arsenal need to work on, and set pieces in general. And actually, Arsenal have got a new set piece coach this season that they've brought in from Manchester City. Owen, was that a primary kind of necessity in the transfer window for you, bringing in a set piece coach for the new season?
Well, look, I think were we the second best or the best in the league last season from defensively on set pieces. Yeah. We were very, very good, but we were also very, very poor at attacking set pieces. So I think the one thing that you could say is that if we...
Okonkwo. No.
I'm behind you, so I'm just going to take that was not good.
I'm about to see something really bad. Really bad. I'll let you react to it first. That is...
Oh, God love you, child. God love you. God love you. Fuck. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
That's not good.
He's obviously at a very out of character moment for Okonkwo, who has been very. It's his first game, and
that's not going to stand him a good stead.
Comes over the top. It's headed annoyingly by Clark onto the header of the Hibernian forward. Okonkwo goes to kick it. I'm not sure why he doesn't. unless it's, I'm just trying to see, is it a pass back from one player? It is. So it's a really awkward pass back, to be fair, from Cedric. Keeper gets it all completely wrong and tries to volley it and misses it, and it's an absolutely simple finish to start the game. That is a really unfortunate Arsenal going 1-0 down against Hibs. You just couldn't write it. That was Martin Boyle with the finish for Hibernian there. Not great.
Put your head on that, surely. But do you want to know what's funny? In those opening few minutes, and I'm just talking about in terms of body language and vocally, he seems like a very commanding young lad, and something like that is, I would imagine, is likely just completely out of character for him. Yeah, strange one. Way to celebrate a new contract.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the worst kind of situation that you could have had. And it's one of those, because I remember, do you remember Emily Martinez? I remember him making some comedic mistakes in pre-season. I remember the thing he did against Reading in that 7-5 League Cup game where he kind of just palmed the ball. I think it was it, what was the Russian striker that began with P? I can't remember his name. He played for Reading. Progniak or something? I can't remember his name. Pogrebniak, yes. And I remember him making a really odd save where it like curled over the top of him. He got a hand to it and just palmed it straight into the net. I mean, he has obviously come a long way, but it's annoying because you know what the fan base can be like sometimes. Do you think that's going to be really stuck with him? Like whenever we're talking about the possibility of signing a backup keeper, that moment there is going to get talked about.
I mean, 100%. And we don't have to expound on it. You already said it. You know the fan base. Any sort of negative thing, they'll harp on it. But this is why you go through preseason. You make these mistakes now. You get them out of your system. You don't make them during the season. You know, and again, it's maybe I shouldn't do watch-alongs because I'm just going to rage the whole time. But yeah, I mean, you never want to see
preseason, fellas. It doesn't matter.
I'd rather see that mistake today instead of 2 months from now, period. And then you get them on your system now, you don't see them 2 months from now. So that's the whole, again, it's just and he's young. You know, young is his first start. You know, mistakes are going to happen. Nerves are a thing. People forget that footballers are human. We've had this discussion before. So, you know.
Williams just had a free kick going into the box. El Neni tried to get the flick on it to put it into the corner. Couldn't get the connection. Matt Macy collected very, very calmly. And, I mean, we've made a couple of decent chances. Obviously, the Nketiah chance right at the beginning was quite big. Ainsley Maitland-Niles doing really good work in the midfield. Flicked ball over the top. Fantastic pass. That's a free kick on the edge of the box for Arsenal as Reece Nelson's taken out. I mean, Maitland-Niles' future is obviously a really odd one to be considering and talking about because we just don't know what's going on with it. Owen, for you, after that interview that he did, is it just a case of now move him on when we need to just to get him moved on, or would you keep him for his utility reasons?
Look, first of all, I think it was an absolute mistake on the club's behalf to not take the money from Wolves when it was there last season. You know, it's very, very much like the Joe Willock situation that we find ourselves in now, where we're sort of hemming and hawing about whether it's worth it or not. That look, man, I'm nervous and because I'm watching the football and I'm just my vernacular goes back to my local normal. That's it. That's clever.
You mean I'm in an erring?
Oh, Jesus. Here we go again. But look,
hits the wall. Sorry, go on, Owen.
Yeah, no. Look, I don't want to speculate and make accusations as to what, but I'm sure a lot of people seen some of the problems that he was having off the pitch online, reports and stuff like that. I think that a player of his ilk, a player of his standard and a player of his age should be grateful for the opportunity to play for a club like Arsenal in any position. And when you have somebody like that who digs their feet so far into the ground and refuses to sort of give any leeway or anything like that, I think that says a lot about their personality. So for me, much like Guendouzi, much like Mesut Ozil, if you haven't got the attitude, move on. That's fine.
Hibernian got a chance on the right-hand side, taken this time quite well by Okonkwo as they're really pushing Arsenal, but Okonkwo's rolled it straight out to the Hibs player, again having another bit of an issue there. I think he just needs to calm down at this point. Obviously, he's a massive mistake to concede the first goal, and he's losing his head a little bit at this stage. And he's a young kid. And, I mean, if you notice in the pre-season squad, all of our goalkeepers, the 4 that have gone, are all under the age of 21. So it's a big ask and a big thing that's happened to him, but I think he just needs to calm down now. Arsenal are getting a little bit irritated, leaving a few tackles in on some of the Hibs players. I mean, I know that Drew said earlier, Owen, that this game doesn't matter. But say you do lose this game, you know what the fan base can be like. You know what will happen. It will be a case of really getting on the back of the team and the manager and the technical director saying, "Look, this isn't good enough. We need some signings. What's going on?" How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, more so than that, I think what you're looking at is probably a lot of players who are out there to prove a point, to argue their case. Literally from back to front. Can you name anybody out in that pitch that is a mainstay in the starting 11 or even the squad at this point, bar maybe Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang? Reece Nelson there turned down the chance of a loan last season, and that sort of come back to bite him. He maybe has the bit between his teeth. Eddie and Nketiah is completely out of favour. The bit between his teeth, Willian as well. So for me, I think that what you're looking at here, and as you say, there's a bit of bite from these players. They may not look at this as a pre-season friendly. They may look at this as them fighting for their case, fighting their case to get back in and around that first team, or trying to put themselves in the shop window for the best move possible.
It's just at the moment Arsenal are getting quite dominated. They just had another chance saved well and comfortably by Okonkwo. It was headed straight at him. But I mean, it's interesting seeing how kind of weak we are in certain areas. I know that a lot of the squad is missing. I know that we're missing quite a few first team players that are set to come back from the summer tournaments. And speaking of which, Drew, obviously Gabriel Magalhaes is going to be unavailable because of his involvement in the Olympics, and then the fact that he got injured, so he's not going to be going to the summer tournament, but he will miss the start of the season because of the tendonitis situation. Granit Xhaka, Bukayo Saka, Kieran Tierney could all miss the start of the season because of their recovery period being extended. Do you think anything changes in regards to, say, like we've not got Saka, so maybe do you keep Willian for the start of the season and then let him go towards the end of the window, or has it changed nothing for you?
Not quite sure, but maybe that's why you might see, like Nelson step in. Who even knows? I you know how I feel about Nelson, so I'm not quite sure what the plan is with that. But yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that maybe Saka deserves like that longer rest for a multitude of reasons. So yeah, I do think we might see a little bit like those changes in the first couple fixtures for the new season, and then I think things will settle down. It's always awkward when you have an international tournament, especially when some of your key players went deep enough to where they need that additional rest. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we had some sort of awkward starting 11 for the first 2-3 league fixtures, and then like move forward from there normally. But yeah, which I think is normal. I'm sure we'll have a lot done about it anyway. So
has there been enough business done yet? Like we were all talking about our expectations at the start of the transfer window, or even just the end of last season, and we were talking about how important it is to get these players in for pre-season to let them sort of adapt and settle in. Do you think there has been enough business done yet, and are you sort of starting to get a bit worried at the fact or at the lack of business?
I'm not. I'm pretty chill about it, to be honest, because obviously it's just a case of the Euros was on. They haven't been able to get much business done because of that situation. They're talking with players that are negotiations that are going to take quite a while. I mean, we obviously haven't really got the one thing that worries me is the plan. Like, we were told about this whole plan from Edu and Arteta and saying they knew what they were going to do. I don't know if Emi Buendia was necessarily part of kind of one of the primary things about that plan, but if it was, then they didn't do very well at getting that target because obviously you went to Aston Villa. I think it was very much a case of Martin Ødegaard was the main priority target. They know that you can't get him now, and so they're about to change things. They're about to switch, and whether that means going to say James Maddison, going to say a Sabitzer, which we've not seen any links to whatsoever. But say we're changing targets, that might extend the amount of time it takes to get that deal done. With the central midfield area, I think what's delaying that is Granit Xhaka's still here and he's not left yet. And so they're kind of waiting for that one, as are quite a few players that I think maybe we thought would be gone at this point and are now on the pre-season tour. So I feel like once we've kind of sorted out a few of the outs, then we'll see more ins coming in. But Drew, what do you make of it?
I mean, I mirror that. Again, so say, for example, how the Ruben Neves speculation keeps popping up. So say we went ahead and did that deal, and then in those negotiations, we expected him to be a first choice partner for Partey, and Xhaka's move falls through. Then we have Granit Xhaka at the club next season, and then look at the conundrum we're now in. So I think that essentially, the club's trying to line up the business they want to do, but again, we can't pull the trigger until we have those outgoings. I don't think it's even about the funding necessarily. So we'll have a massively bloated squad if we don't get people out of the door and we keep bringing people in. I think it's as simple as that. None of these players are going to want to just sit on the bench because their loan move broke, or their full deal broke down, and then we brought in players expecting them to leave and they never did. So patience. Again, like look at the calendar. We've got some time, so we can get it done. As long as the thing I only care about is as long as the club is working behind the scenes to get the deals lined up, that they can just immediately get them in once players go out the door. That to me is all I care about. So as long as we're doing that correctly, that's kind of the bottom line for me.
Arsenal had a big chance missed just before you go, Owen. Kolasinac headed back across the box. We are seeing Kolasinac cross now. A good clearance by the Hibs defenders. It's going to go for a corner, but we've had a really good chance. Cross came in, I think, from Cedric. Headed across the box from Kolasinac. I think it was Reece Nelson coming in at the back post. Couldn't get the right connection on the shot, and it's cleared off the line. But Arsenal now got a corner. Go on, Owen.
No, I was just going to say that Alex McCarthy in the chat makes a good point, and he says if we sell Xhaka and lose Partey and Elneny to AFCON in January, who's playing? And I know this sort of goes off on a bit of a tangent, but it's more so back to the Yves Bissouma thing, because one of the counter arguments I hear to why Arsenal aren't going for Bissouma is the fact of the AFCON, the possibility of losing another player to that tournament. But would I be right in saying that Yves Bissouma hasn't played for his national side, is it Mali, in 3 years or so, that he actually hasn't played for them for a very long time and doesn't really play for them for whatever reason? So I'm not sure that argument holds much weight, to be honest with you.
No, I don't think it does. I think at the moment, to be honest, this game is going to have a big impact upon the mood set of the fan base. And the thing is, it shouldn't. Nelson's having a really good run through the middle, just tackled last second. But this game, I know that we're sitting here and we're quite level-headed. I've heard that things are going to hell on another channel. You'd be unsurprised to learn. I'm pretty chill about this. Like, it's a preseason game. If you actually go through the team, there's no one bar Aubameyang that's a starter in the first team, I think. I'm trying to think of anyone else that would be. I don't think there's literally no one. So it is all the second string side. Yes, you would say that still these guys should be beating Hibs, but they're not, because they're not really seemingly good enough to do that. And it's a bit of a mishmash in pre-season. It's never going to give you a genuine insight into what's been going on. But I'll tell you, it doesn't look too pleased in his hoodie on the sidelines. But Owen, go on, what were you going to say?
No, I was wrapped up. But on that, you said there about the fact that Mikel Arteta doesn't look too happy. Do you think that a poor start to pre-season, not even a poor start to pre-season, a poor pre-season in general, do you think that possibly puts more pressure on Mikel Arteta at the start of the season? Does pre-season
define poor?
I mean, if he loses to Hibs, let's say how many preseason matches? Let's just say 6, and he loses 4 of them. Does that take any sort of weight into the actual competitive season? In terms of the league, as to maybe a decision being made on his future sooner or later, if you know what I mean.
I don't think so, no. I mean, I've seen seasons where we've won every single preseason game and then lose the first 3 of the season. So it's like, it has absolutely no bearing on what results might actually be. The only thing preseason is for getting your fitness. It's for sorting out kind of formations and systems and trying out different ideas. And usually it's different ideas. You're not going in and looking at the opposition. There's been no studying of Hibs. I can tell you that for a fact. They haven't gone into this week and gone, right, lads, I'm going to give you homework. We're going to study 50 million videos of Hibs this week, and we're going to assess how we play, and this is how we're going to win the game. No, none of that's happened. It would have been fitness, a few drills, and just getting them out on the pitch again, and that's it. That's why this result means absolutely nothing.
This is going to be so awkward when All or Nothing comes out and they're all sat watching Hibs for days.
Thankfully, it doesn't start. But I guarantee, I am so sure, even if we watch that All or Nothing series, even in the Florida games and the Chelsea and the Spurs game at the end of the preseason, I'd be very shocked if any research has gone into the opposition. Because how are you ever going to predict the lineup of the opposition in preseason? You're never going to be able to know that.
You can't. You have to go off of what their last match last season, and that's entirely unreliable because you don't know what they've done on the back end between then and now. That's what I keep saying before. This is literally it's a run out. It's for whoever's getting minutes today. It's about getting minutes into their legs. And that's it. Speaking of which, you bring up a good topic, by the way. I want to know your guys' take on the All or Nothing, because in the US, like for better or worse, we kind of love that stuff, and it's not because like we don't think
Jared was really pushing for it on the podcast earlier.
we don't think it brings any amount of like disrepute to the club. For us, it's more of like, especially because we don't live, like obviously I don't live in England, like I can't just rock up to the Emirates, you know, like I've like never seen certain things about the club, you know what I mean? So for us, a lot of times it's like you get that look into something you love so much that you don't actually have access to. So we're into that kind of stuff. So things like Drive to Survive was big.
It's like a Nelson with a shot on the edge of the box. Nothing happened. Go on, keep going.
Yeah, I'm really big into F1. So when Drive to Survive came out, I absolutely loved it. Like I was hooked on it for that same exact reason. And even though I'm not a Cities fan, I watched Cities All or Nothing as well for that exact thing, because you want to get those kind of inside things that you just don't have access to because we don't work in football, you know, like directly in the game, like at a club level. So we don't know. So what's your take on it? Both of you actually, and the chat as well. If you guys want to chime in, please do.
It's I like it, but that's the bare bones of my answer is I like the idea, but much like you, I'm a big sports documentary fan as well, and I absolutely loved the Man City one. And as funny as I found the Spurs one, it's quite well put together. What I will say is you have to take it for what it is. It's propaganda essentially. You are seeing what the club want you to see. I mentioned before the fact that in the Tottenham Hotspur one, you didn't see any inside scoop of the Mauricio Pochettino sacking. You didn't see anything really. So that would tell me that the club have some creative control over what goes into the final edit. So Arsenal...
Lean down the left flank, crossed into the box. It's out for a corner. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so for me, I think what this is look, we've heard this word being thrown about by fan associations, by fan channels, and now by the club ownership, and it's transparency. And I think what you're seeing is this is what, no offense, Drew, but American owners, this is what they think the fans mean by transparency. And I think this is what they think they're giving back to the fan base. But look, it's going to be interesting to see. Is it a good idea? We can only wait and see. It could be good, it could be bad. I think my biggest worry about the whole situation is that you have an inexperienced manager under pressure, and now you're putting cameras into the dressing room on top of him. But look, if that's too much pressure for a person, then maybe that tells us all we need to know about the man, you know. So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
100%. I think that for me, I've been yearning for this. Like I've genuinely been really kind of waiting for this to happen and hoping that would happen, because, and whilst I do think there will be censorship and it'll be a case of Arsenal will allow certain things and they won't allow other things, any more than what we currently see is more than we currently have, and we have no access really into the ins and outs of what goes on behind the scenes at the club. It's a very, very secretive club. You don't get an insight into it whatsoever. And so finding out Hibbs on the attack here, hits the post on the left hand side, number 25. Arsenal getting really pressed. 29, sorry, that was Bradley with the strike. Left-footed shot. Okonkwo seemed to have it covered, but it did hit the post. Just a little interplay on the right-hand side here. He does look like he was probably just onside, but Kolasinac very defensively unaware of where his player was, and it does go to show that Arsenal should look into be... I mean, I've been saying this means absolutely nothing, but for Kolasinac, it means absolutely everything, clearly, and he needs to go. Is the evaluation that we come to from this. Go on, Owen.
No. That's it. I'm done. But here's one for you, right? With the striking situation at the minute, with Lacazette, with Aubameyang, and with Balogun, is Balogun somebody that needs a loan?
Well, I've said this before. I said I don't think a loan would be a bad thing, because he's at the age where he needs to play, and he needs to be playing it pretty much every single week. Is he going to do that at Arsenal? No, he's not going to do that at Arsenal. So it makes the most sense that he would go. But then it's about where does he go? Because Arsenal are showing time and time again that the players they're sending on loan, they're not really sending to the best places. I mean, Saliba going to Marseille. I know me and Drew have disagreements about the kind of the logistics of this, but I think Arsenal do need to be more forceful with the way in which they plan their loan deals and send players out on loan to. And Balogun would have, for me, to go to a fellow Premier League club further down the table. But it's where and what team does he get into and start regularly in the Premier League is a big question. Maybe Watford, maybe Norwich, but I mean, you got Timo Pukki there, and is he going to get?
That's a big maybe. He's not ever going to.
It's a big maybe. Crystal Palace possibly, but
were Brighton interested in him before?
Brighton.
Mm-hmm. Brighton
are linked to Nketiah as a possible option, and I would put Balogun ahead of him right now, so I wouldn't judge him at all for trying to get Balogun online. But it is tough because obviously the competitiveness in the Premier League teams is really high, but you need to target really high level football for him, I think, on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because there's again another situation springs to mind, another player springs to mind, and my worry going into this transfer window is when you start looking into the actual nitty-gritty details of what needs done, there is a monumentous amount of work that needs to go in this summer. And I just wonder, are we being realistic in our expectations of what we expect from the club to do in one summer? Are we being realistic? Are we being fair? I think we are fair to put that expectations on the club, because it isn't just one summer. It's an accumulation of almost 20 years of summers, 20 years of mismanagement and decline. But are we being realistic? That's what I would wonder.
Maybe a bit of both. I think maybe you could say you're realistic about how you want them to handle the continuous rebuild perhaps this summer, but I think a lot of fans are being unrealistic about what our goals are for next season. I think
what's our goal?
For me, I think our goal should be to try to get top 5, top 6. I think to say we should be pushing for top 4 is a massive stretch. And I
I wouldn't say someone saying we should be pushing for top 4 is the wrong thing to say. I think we should be pushing for top 4.
Well, what I mean is that, not pushing for, but expect us to finish there.
Yeah, that's I don't think you should expect us to finish in the top 4.
No, I think any big club always wants to finish up as high up table as possible. They're never going to say, well, we're going to target 7th this season. No one's going to go into the season and say that. Arteta certainly isn't. But I don't think that the fans should expect us to finish top 4 is what I mean. I think they can and should expect us to be much more diligent and decisive in the market in terms of the outs and ins. And we talked about that before, bringing in the right player profiles for both the short, medium, for all three, both short, medium, and long-term goals in terms of that. So I know something probably just happened. I can't watch it, so I'm just hanging out with you guys while you watch
really, because Kolasinac being Kolasinac.
Fair enough. Okay. So I think for me that's kind of where it is. So I think it's a bit of both. And I feel like there should be a considerable amount of pressure for certain things. But I think we also have to taper our expectations and realize where we are. And my biggest gripe right now is that I think a lot of fans have yet to come to terms with what we are in our current entity. Historically, the club is massive. Currently, the club is not in line with what its reputation is in terms of what we're doing on the pitch. And until we get back to that level, we cannot say we expect top 4 finishes right now, especially with how ridiculously competitive the Premier League is. It's as much as a Bundesliga fanatic I am, the Premier League is far and away the most competitive.
Didn't know you
Shut your mouth. And there's so much parity in the Bundesliga with the Premier League's like that on steroids. Like, and we've seen it last year, just how tough it can be, even for the best teams that can go to a Brighton and lose. Like on any day, any of them can. So I just don't feel like, we can really say, well, we have no Europe now, so there's no excuse to not get a top 4 finish. And personally, I wouldn't want to jump us back into Champions League that fast anyway, because of how much work we have to do. We just get absolutely mauled in Champions League. So, one step at a time for me.
Yeah. I think the expectation for us to finish in the top 4 is not correct. I don't think that's a way of doing it evenly. And by the way, it's just hit half-time, and Arsenal are 1-0 down to Hibernian. So, guys, Arteta out. While you were talking there, Joe, I did click over to watch a little clip of what's going on in other spheres of the Arsenal world, and it is meltdown. You'd be surprised to believe. Absolute meltdown. Pandemonium already, Arsenal losing it. I do expect Arsenal to be making a hell of a lot of changes. You've got Pepe, Lacazette, Smith Rowe, Bellerin, all on the bench to come on. So, not the best first half. Owen, I'll get your initial thoughts, but we're not, as I say, this is more just watching the game quite chilled way with the chat. It's not a Premier League game. It's not a cup game. It's pre-season, guys. Chill out.
And I can give you the update that is, in fact, John McGinn's brother. That was annoying me. And
it is John McGinn's brother.
It is John McGinn's brother.
Paul McGinn.
Paul McGinn. Look, it is what it is. It's as somebody put into the chat there, and you mentioned earlier, apart from Aubameyang, there's nobody out on that pitch that will be gracing Arsenal starting 11 on a regular basis next season. So take it for what it is. I think when we look at a lot of the players that are out there, your Williams, your Reece Nelson, Mohamed Ali, these are players that the majority of fans are sort of happy to see move on this summer. So if we were to turn around and start praising them and demanding better for it, would be sort of contradicting what we've been saying for seasons past. So one thing I have been impressed with, though, to a certain extent, is I think Reece Nelson's been quite good, quite direct. Ainsley Maitland-Niles has been quite direct, but again, we're falling back into the same old traps of these players are very good for flashes in the pans, but it's sustained burns that they sort of struggle to give. And I don't know, maybe
slashes in the pans.
No, flash.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, what you cook in a very weird way.
I know. But yeah, no. It could benefit us, look, because these sort of little performances, it puts them in the shop window a bit better and could add maybe a couple of digits onto their price tag. So,
I mean, let's be real. The worst thing about this is the fact it cost me $15.99 to watch. That's the only thing that I can actually moan about at the moment right now.
How much?
$15.99 to watch this and Rangers. We talked about this morning, Drew, and in the 8 a.m. show, a lot of people were asking in the chat box, do you think it's right that the club are charging its fans to watch a pre-season game on the website? Now, there's two schools of thought for me. One is we've gone through a pandemic, and so the club are trying to make as much money as feasibly possible from lots of different avenues. The other is they're a hugely rich club anyway, and $15.99 to fans that want to watch it on the website is a hell of a lot of money. So what do you think about it?
It's hard for me to be, sympathetic. But do you know how much money I have to pay to watch things sometimes? Subscriptions? So to me, $15.99, it kind of sucks, obviously, and it's just preseason. For me, I would probably, what I would do is I would do kind of a hybrid, is do certain preseason figures you pay for. If it's like a high profile one, maybe you have some sort of price point for that, and maybe not 15, maybe say 10. But for this, certainly, I would probably put this as free because of the fact that, we're just coming out of a pandemic. People are trying to get back on their feet again in a lot of ways. Everyone's excited that club football's back. Maybe give the first one free also because it's Hibs. And it's not disrespect to Hibs, but Hibs aren't also, say if we were playing Inter, for example, maybe you charge for that one. Maybe do a mix of both. And the point of, the club trying to make money back makes obvious sense, especially because we're a global club and a lot of people will happily pay the money to watch a preseason fixture. So, but I do think a better balance is necessary. I don't think charging fans to watch every preseason fixture would be fair, but I do think charging for some of them would be. So,
I'm just checking if this was actually on telly, because someone just said you could buy a Sky Sports Pass. So I'm just checking if I've just been completely mugged.
You're going to have to get the super chats and people to reimburse Tom for his massive outlay.
I don't see it on Sky, so no. I think
it's the whole way that football is televised in the UK is absolutely insane. Like for my Sky package each month, it's upwards of it's like 80 quid, and then for BT for the European games, which I don't have to worry about next season, it's like 35 to 38 quid a month. I think they really need to look at reformatting. I always wondered why is there not some sort of subscription-based thing where you can subscribe to see your team and your team only, and then if you want any additional ones, you can pay extra for that there, because I think that's the problem. I look now at the sort of younger generation, and it's almost strange to say, but there's less football fans at a younger age now than there was when I was that age, and I think it's because many people are just being priced out of the game at this stage now. Not all families can afford to have those Sky Sports packages, so children aren't being exposed to football in the same way at such a young age as we were. And I think what they are seeing as a moneymaker in the short term may be detrimental to them in the long term because of the lack of exposure for the sport.
Gianfranco says, a prediction about the first team with almost no first team players. Guys, I found it the worst prediction ever. I mean, you literally cannot take any indication whatsoever about this game for next season at all. You'd have to be mad to do that. There's a lot of people saying about where you could have watched it for free in the chat and stuff like that. I just didn't do my research. I just went and got it on there. Drew, I think Jared sent you a link so you can watch it somewhere.
No, he did. That's what I've been trying to use. I think it's something on my end, so it is what it is. I think it seems like I'm not missing much in the first place, so don't worry about it.
No, it doesn't. You're not really missing anything so far. Chat box, let me know how you're feeling about things so far, different performances, how has it made you feel? Try to be as level-headed as you can, or, as crazy as you want. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box, because I've been a little bit, what's the word? Neglectant. Is that a word? Neglectant? I don't know if that is.
Negligent.
Negligent.
Yes, I got to correct him.
That's the word.
I got to correct him.
Yes. Negligent.
Neglected.
Full-time writer right
here. Someone relies on spell check all the time.
Can I throw up a topic, Tom? And this might not be one that you really, really want to cover, but I'm quite interested, to be honest, because with the Euros final and the way it ended, it's funny because I've stated that I'm somebody who was more than happy to see England lose. And the way I described it on our podcast was, it's funny that throughout a tournament I cheered almost every team that played against England on. Through the final, I was cheering every kick of the ball from Italy. Throughout extra time, doing the same. Through the penalties, I was cheering for every Italian ball that hit the back of the net and cheering every England one that missed. But through one kick of the game from one player, that whole dynamic changed, and I was so gutted. And I couldn't even enjoy the moment. And it's funny because what followed, and everybody knows with what followed on social media and what happened outside the stadium, I was looking at you and you seemed so disappointed, not only by the result, but sort of the backlash from after the game. How did it feel for you, looking on as somebody who considers themselves probably a proud Englishman and somebody who has a lot of love for the national team, for a group of players that did so well to be let down by a minority of people? What way did that sort of hit you?
A couple of things. I mean, I tweeted this out the other day, but words like minority and like the actions of just a few have really got to me over the last few days, because what this has actually taught me about England and about social media is that minority is a complete underestimation of the amount of people that actually do this. It is way more than people had any idea. And I think, if anything, that this kind of situation has brought with it a realization for me of how bad the problem really genuinely is. I mean, I remember watching football when I was a kid, and you would hear about kind of racist chants from stands and stuff, but it was very rarely you hear about it in the UK. Now, that may be because of media, that may be because it wasn't actually just reported and it was kind of covered up or wasn't talked about as much. And you would mainly hear about it kind of like when teams were playing in Europe in certain places. There's no point in me naming a place because it wouldn't be fair. So in terms of my feeling about when I saw the reaction to the England national side, it was one of obvious anger, but it wasn't surprise. No emotion of surprise came into my mind whatsoever. As soon as those three players, Sancho, Rashford and Saka, missed those penalties, I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was so scripted as to what, and that is the saddest thing. And on top of that, to see politicians come out and try and say things like, "Oh, it's abhorrent that people are doing these things," and these same politicians said it was fine for people to go and boo people taking the knee. It's just an absolute disgrace. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, you said proud. Did you say proud Englishman? Because I'm certainly not a proud Englishman. I'm just an Englishman.
No, but to be honest with you, with that's why, and this might sound so stupid because, as I said, like, for somebody who is anti-England, if you want to put that on in terms of the national football team, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy when that happened. I wasn't happy when I seen groups of England fans going out and letting the side down and living up to many of the stereotypes that people often throw at the England fan base. I was sad for the likes of you, for the likes of Lee Judges, for the likes of Mike from the Gooner pod who follows England, because the team did so well. The manager held himself in such a high standard. They were so admirable, I think, in many ways. And the way I described it was, this is probably the first time that England as a collective, in terms of on the pitch, have been likeable in years. And for the fans to let it down, it was just, I think, so disappointing for people like yourself, who follow in the right way.
It's one of the things that I did was when I came onto the channel the other day, like the day after it happened, and I did the 8 a.m. show. One of the things that I wanted to do was talk about it, because one of the things I feel like, as a white guy, I feel like too many white people feel uncomfortable talking about racism and talking about, because obviously being white, we have a lot more privileges. That's the reality of the situation. I've never had to deal with anything. And I mean, some of the stories that Drew tells me that he has to deal with in his life, like, I've never had to experience anything like that. So, and it's an ignorance on the part, I think, at times. But for me, I want to talk about racism. I want to highlight the things that go on. I want to highlight the experiences that people like Drew have to deal with on a daily basis, because it's the only way that it comes, that we do anything about it, is by educating people. Drew, I feel self-conscious talking about you while you're sitting there, so just weigh in on this one for me.
Did you not see my face just now that I gave you when you were talking? I was just like, what is he saying? But no. I mean, it's tough, because a lot of people have, since, I would say probably since George Floyd, because I wrote a piece about my thoughts about the George Floyd situation, and being a Black Arsenal fan in a sphere where Black supporters in football and Black footballers themselves are usually, people don't take them as seriously. I got a lot of good feedback from it, and a lot of people started DMing me, asking me questions, and that was slightly overwhelming. But in the sense, it's also, I realized how many people are genuinely curious, and generally like yourself, they want to ask the questions because they want to know, because they want to be educated, because they don't experience it. So it's a weird conversation to have sometimes, and it's such a layered conversation. Like, there's so many. I don't want to call them intricacies, but intricacies about racism that you deal with, like, because I deal with multiple types of it, because I'm Black. So I deal with that. And then, but I'm also light-skinned Black. So then I deal with racism inside the Black community because I'm light-skinned. So there's that too. So there's multiple layers of it. But the overall crux for me, like, when the whole situation happened, I remember sitting there and we were talking about it in the Yama group chat on Twitter, and a couple of people and I were chatting on Twitter. And I think we mentioned it in our WhatsApp DM. We were just like, great, 3 Black players missed penalties, England are out. You know exactly what's going to happen. And within 5 minutes, people were reporting the abuse already on Instagram. I'm just like, well, of course. And of course I got angry about it. And I'm just like, to me, when I see things like that, people then try to justify it and say, oh, I was drunk and angry in the moment. And it's like, listen, like, you just needed the excuse to try to say what you needed to say, and then you're going to try to excuse your behavior. It's not because you did it out of anger, it's because that's how you genuinely feel. And that's the thing that I try to get people to understand. It's that there's no such thing as convenient racism. People may use it conveniently when they want to, but it's not convenient because that's how they think 24/7. And that's what's so tricky about it, because like for myself, for example, like, even though, I was born and raised in New York, and that's, New York is a very democratic state, at least if you're in New York City, that doesn't mean that I didn't experience racism just because I didn't live in Alabama. Do you know what I mean? Like, anywhere I go, you have to deal with certain stigmas and certain assumptions, and it all comes from the home environment. It's cliche to say, but no one's born a racist. You pick up racist behaviors and thoughts and tendencies because you learn it from your environment, from your parents, or from your school environment, or from friends of yours, and you pick up on it, and they sort of almost, it's like an indoctrination, if you will, So Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much more to say about what happened other than kind of what I already said on social media. But for me, one of the things that I always try to remind people is that there's so much work to be done about this topic that it's likely not going to change in our lifetimes. Don't count on it. Racism has been around for millennia, centuries, millennia. It's not going to change. We'll all be dead for hundreds of years before there's any legitimate progress there, but the progress has to start from somewhere. So, and it's kind of on the point that one of the things that I always found interesting, and I tie it in with the experience that, Saka and Sancho and Rashford had, is if anyone doesn't follow Romelu Lukaku on Instagram or any social, you should, because he speaks about this a lot. And I have my biases with certain things, but he goes into because he was born in Antwerp, but he's black and his parents are immigrants. And he always says that, when I play well and Belgium win, I'm Belgian. But the second I miss, I'm all of a sudden I'm an immigrant. And people mention that about a lot of England players now. And Ozil had the same thing. So it's not just obviously it's not just an England problem. It's in every country in the world has some sort of prejudice about some sort of other race that's within its borders. But I just want my biggest thing is I just hope people actually listen, because so many people still try to dismiss it, and they try to say that people just use the race card, racism doesn't exist, like all this stupid shit, and that just kind of just makes my blood boil. It's just like, yes, it does. Like, I had a conversation yesterday where I had to explain to people that like there have been literally times like where people have just called me a nigger to my face. Like it didn't end well for the person, but it still happened. You know what I mean? Like they'll do it. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. It's just like these things are real. And the thing for me is like
stories. I'm sorry to cut across you there. When I hear these stories, I think one of the hardest things it is sometimes is just coming from a white person's perspective. Is that I have no comprehension of that scenario, because I've never ever in my entire life had to deal with someone being racist towards me, and I wouldn't even know what that would look like.
It's funny because I very much like you, Tom, I can't relate to Drew's stories in exact, but I remember when I was a young kid, obviously coming from the north of Ireland, I was one half of sectarian religious divide, and I remember playing in a football competition when I was 9 or 10, when I had no real understanding of religion. I didn't even know. I remember having to ask my mum, what religion am I? And I remember during the football match I was playing as a right back, and I was going down the line, and parents, not children, not coaching staff, but the parents of the opposition's team were spitting at us because of the religion that we fell under. And for me, even now as an almost 30-year-old man, I still look back so vividly on that there. And for me to think that somebody has to go through that in adulthood and has to be aware of their creed or their color going to certain places in 2021 as adults is absolutely heartbreaking and sickening, to think that they even have to acknowledge stuff like that happening. It's sickening.
No, I mean it's certainly not easy, but it's weird because what I try to say to people is like it's weird to say that you get used to racism, but I do get used to it, like because it's such a common thing to deal with, and a lot of it is passive. Most of it's not like in my face, like. No one's going to walk up to my brother and I and usually say anything because we're not exactly small people.
You mean the things that they say, they don't think what they're saying is racist, but that it is?
No, by passive, it's like they'll think it, but they won't say it.
Oh, okay.
Like it's passive. Like, so what they'll do is they'll be passive aggressive about it. Like if I was to walk into a store, like I'll get certain looks because of how I look.
Right.
That's just one example or whatever. Or like I remember back in New York City when I would go through like my daily work commute, I would always take public transportation, obviously, because whoever drives in New York City is absolutely crazy. And if I would step onto the train, sometimes you see people would see me step onto the train and they would maybe like grab their bag just a little closer because they think we're gonna rob them because I'm a big black guy. Like things like that. Passive stuff that only I would notice. You wouldn't notice because you've never experienced it. But when I notice it, Like I make note of it. Like my brother and I used to talk about that kind of stuff all the time. So like I don't know, it's like I said, it's such a weird topic for me to kind of explain, because like that's what I meant when I said before that there's so many levels of it.
Yeah.
And no, you wouldn't know how to deal with it, and I don't blame you for that. So but that's also why like I encourage people to ask me questions, as long as they're respectful questions. Like don't ask me some stupid shit. Like then it's a whole other thing. But like if you're genuinely curious about things, then I'll always have a conversation about it, because no, we don't educate people about racism at all, about any race. It's not just about if you're black or not. It's anything. If you're Hispanic, if you're Asian, if you're Native American, or if you're from another. I'm just speaking from the American perspective. If you're another part of the world, if you're from some part of in Africa, if you're from Asia, like wherever it is, ask questions. Like if you're genuine in your approach, like people are usually happy to sit down and have that conversation with you. You brought up something, because you said you couldn't
very
really
quickly.
fathom.
Pepe just hit the bar, by the way, from a free kick on the right-hand side of the pitch.
Progress. I guess we're now winning the league because Pepe almost scored.
Pepe got into the box there, cleared away and dealt with very, very simply. Just before you carry on with that, Drew, we have made quite a few substitutions at half-time. Pepe, as we say, has come on. Balogun's come on. Lacazette has come on. Smith Rowe has come on, wearing the number 32. So they're still teasing and waiting for that number 10 to come through. I'm sure you'll see a few pieces about that very soon. Cedric is still on, as far as I'm aware. They have changed the goalkeeper. I believe it's Hine that has come on the pitch. El Neni is still on the pitch. But other than that, I think Nelson's still in play. Partey is definitely on as well. Pablo Marie is still on as well. So there's been a few changes, but
first time I've seen
definitely interesting.
Partey in his new number 5.
Omar Rekic is also one at the back, so that's one to keep an eye on too. So carry on, Drew.
No, so yeah, when you said that it's hard for you to fathom things, that's why people will sometimes make comments like, well, that couldn't have happened. That would never happen. That's not possible. It's like, and they think we're making things up. It's like, no, I promise you, like I have better things to do than make up stories about what people do or say towards me because of how I looked. You know what I mean? Like, and then again, that goes into a whole different thing about like more often, and I try to use historical context because like, I was a history major and that's what my other passion is. Like, there's a reason why, like when Italian immigrants came to the U.S., they were also discriminated against because they were darker than the average white American. It's the same thing. It's so much racism is about, it's rooted, ironically enough, in a lot of religious ideologies, like the darker you are, the closer you are to Satan, and therefore that kind of thing. That has a lot to do with it as well. So, but a lot of people don't know that either.
Genuinely, you're saying a lot of stuff that I need to educate myself on a lot more. So.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm giving you
the thing for a lot of people.
I'm giving you the American brand of racism. Like obviously it changes based on where you go, but a lot of that has to do with that because this is a country that was quote unquote founded on such religious principles, and religion has been used to segregate for the longest time. Particularly, no offense to anybody here, but particularly the Catholic Church. Like there's examples of it all throughout history. And one of the things is, one of the things they used to preach is that, if someone is of darker skin, is because they've been tainted, by, whatever. And because of that led a lot of discrimination in certain sectors for a lot of time. So
you got a history degree. Is that right? Yeah. That's what I thought. I thought you did. I thought you had a history degree.
Sure did. There you go. But yeah, and then I have to go. I'm sorry in advance, but yeah. And then one of the things I try to explain to people is like why there's racism between different groups in the Black community, and that goes back to slavery and or just the mixing. Like a lot of people who are darker skinned Black feel like if you're lighter skinned Black, that means someone in your family betrayed the race and married or had a child to someone who was white or a different race, and you're then tainted in a way. A lot of people genuinely feel that way, and people who are darker skinned than I am have told me that they don't want to be around me because they feel like I'm not Black enough to be around them. I've literally been told this as well. So that's what I mean. Like there's different types of
so many layers.
It's not.
It's like Inception,
and it's not an easy. Like the situation itself isn't just very. Ironically enough, it's not very black and white. It's just very, very gray on so many different issues and so many different things and different variables and the whole thing. So yeah, I just hope it changes. I know it won't. This season, something else is going to happen this season, and we're going to see another instance of racism. And no amount of the prime minister coming out and saying he condemns actions. That's not enough, man. Like, you've got, like, the only thing that's going to matter is punishment. It's got to be harsh. That's why
do you think, Drew, that the vast majority, I would say more so nowadays, the vast majority of racism is committed on social media? Is it just a case of, once again, that identification on social media platforms is a must?
I think so. That's got so much to do with it. Like, when you have such, like, when people can be, there's such ambiguity on social media. When you have that, people can just say whatever the fuck they want, and you can't stop them. The worst case scenario, they lose their account, they make another one. What to do? It takes 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, and they can go right back to where they began. So there's got to be a way, and I struggle to think that there isn't. There's got to be a way where it's got to be tied into, like, your ID or something, where and that kind of sucks, because then people go into the whole monitoring with the government thing, and then that's why people are against it. And part of me understands that, but listen, the government monitors you anyway. Like, you can't escape it regardless. So don't bother to try. But for me, it's so harmful. Like, I don't think people really understand, and they'll never show you. Like, Sokka's never going to show you exactly what those comments did to him emotionally and mentally, but I promise you that it wasn't a good thing. He probably was an absolute fucking mess, and he might still be. It's not an easy thing to deal with. Like, I can't imagine someone sending me, like, that many comments in one, and it just rattled off every 3, 4, 5 seconds. Your phone's bleeping. It's just like this comment after the next. It's bad enough when someone calls you something one time, let alone hundreds of times, thousands of times, and you see it. And
do you think with Bukayo Saka that do you think it would be better for him to get stuck back in as quick as he can with the Arsenal camp, or do you think that there'll be an extended period of leave for him because of maybe the trauma that he's faced after missing that penalty?
It's a good question, and for me,
the argument is he should be, really. He should.
For me, I can only speak for myself. If it was me, I would say it should be up to me. How everyone deals with issues differently, right? So, Saka might deal with it different than Sancho does. Saka might want to get right back in, his mind right. He wants to be focused on football. Someone else might need time, because everyone deals with mental and social traumas differently. They only know what they need, right? And obviously, they might speak to a counselor about it, and they might get reevaluated, but based off that, and there might be recommendations. But at the end of the day, I know myself better than anybody else. You know yourself better than anybody else, right? So if you know that you need to get right back in the office immediately, so to speak, then go right back in and get back stuck in, get your mind right. That's what you need. Some people might need an extra week or 2 weeks off. It just depends. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way of handling it. I think Saka will know better than anybody what he needs.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate about identification. Matt G says in the chat, I don't think verification will work. We've seen people get called out and suffer no consequences, like the kid in Ireland who abused Ian Wright, and there was no consequences for him. I remember speaking to Hugh Wizzy about this on his channel, and he raised an important point about how if you start putting identification onto accounts on social media, then in countries where some very questionable stuff happens, when you can be found and people can find you, that where basically free speech is not allowed in certain ways to speak out against your government, against whoever's in charge of the country. And if you start doing that, if there's an identification linked to your account, then you can be found to do that, and some very inhumane things can happen.
Remember, we actually discussed this. I think it was actually the three of us before in one of the WhatsApp groups, and I mentioned the fact that surely Twitter is capable of creating or changing their platform so that, say, for example, I wanted to go on and verify my account with my personal identification, and let's say Drew didn't. Well, that's fine, but I can only interact with other verified people, and Drew can only interact with non-verified people, and you can have the ability to change your settings of who you're willing to interact with. That way, with all due respect, the bottom dwellers can scrap it out with each other, and the rest of us can get on with our lives as normal.
It's not a bad idea. I think it breeds this point of, whenever you attach your real identification, which is something that I've really pushed for in the past. I have been trying to do more research on it, found out about kind of the issues with that method, with that process. And it's a really tough one to work out. And I think for me, that it doesn't really start with social media. I think part of me has changed my mind on that, because even if you attach identification, as Matt G talked about, it's the consequences of racism. It's identifying racism. It's identifying how you deal with it. It's the authorities that have to change the laws behind it to make it more to make prosecution of these actions much simpler to happen, to make sure that if someone is found to be racist, that it guarantees some form of consequence, and that consequence involves, as a priority, education, and to change that person. Because as soon as, sure, we should be putting deterrents in place to stop with anything, but with something like racism, it's always got to come down to education. It's always got to be offering someone the opportunity to change their view on things. Lacazette has just missed a great chance, and it's just the edge of the box there. Still 1-0 to Hibs, by the way, if you are wondering what the score is right now.
There has been quite a bit of energy injected into the side with these changes, I think, especially with those of Thomas Partey and Emile Smith-Rowe. Man, it just shows that Thomas Partey is an absolute Rolls Royce of a footballer. And even though on the ball he may not impact the game as much as people would like, but in terms of his presence, his positional awareness, he's different class to anything that we've had for a long time.
You know what's also a shame is that I know, and it may not be correlated at all, but ever since we started having a discussion about racism, 80 people have dropped out of watching the stream. So, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I think someone yawned in the chat. I'm like, well, yawn yourself, to whatever else you want to go do. That's fine.
It's a real shame. To be honest, I've said this from the start. If I lost 90% of my subscribers and continue to talk about racism openly and what needs to be talked about in the correct way, I couldn't give a flying whatever about this. At the end of the day, it's important. Anyway, we're seeing a chance here running through the middle. Balogun with a shot straight at the keeper. Balogun's been quite lively since actually coming onto the pitch, and we had that discussion earlier on in the show about following Balogun and talking about him, where we see his kind of future. Drew, do you think that he is needing to be kept at the club this summer, and do you think it is a case in point where we do need to give him the minutes, or would a loan be more of a genuine way to manage that situation?
No, I think it's got to be a loan for me. Just because it's about minutes now. He's at that age where minutes are key. Like eventually, no amount of youth team training in football is going to be enough. So if we don't move Nketiah for whatever reason, if Lacazette's not sold, well, obviously I think we would try to sell him before Oba. So you already have 3 people ahead of him. So at best case scenario, he's fighting for Nketiah's minutes that are going to be drastically reduced because we have no Europe. So the simple answer for me is that you have to loan him. I don't know if he's going to get a Premier League loan. I know we mentioned that before. It's hard to see what club. Maybe, if Brentford sold Tony, maybe you could look at that. Potentially, you never know, but maybe look at the Championship. I'm fine with that. It's not the Premier League, but it's certainly not. I don't know, Serbia. So. But yeah, no. But in all seriousness, I think this for me. This is probably the thing I focus on most about when Owen brought up before about making sure that we have demands about. We want to know the club's doing things correctly and going the right way. For me, managing the prospects has to be just so much better. Like, say what you will, like there's a reason why people rated Nelson as highly as they did when he was an academy product. The fact that we've kind of bungled his development once he graduated from the academy is a shame. And I think for that reason, I think we're going to end up selling him. I don't think he's going to ever be a first choice option at Arsenal. I think he's got too much development left to do, and we haven't managed it correctly. I think we've got to start doing it right now. And I think this is the perfect someone to do that. So for me, I'm happy we're retaining him. I'm happy he signed on, but I think we still have to loan him this season. He's never going to play this season, barring injury, disaster. He's never going to play. So loan him for a year. Lacazette's leaving after this season. Nketiah is probably also leaving after the season if we don't sell him. I can't see him extending. So he automatically gets a year first team football somewhere this season. He comes in next season, and at worst, he's second choice behind Aubameyang if he's still here. So hopefully he'll get Europe, or he'll at least get backup minutes. But yeah, no, I think loan for me for sure.
Emile Smith-Rowe had a great run down the right-hand side into the box. Tried to take it around the keeper. Couldn't quite go onto it. Those noises you can hear from Owen and him reacting to that live.
Thomas Partey's free kick was, it was on point.
Yeah, Lacazette's little chips pass through. Pepe's now got a corner on our right-hand side. It's going to be swung into the box. You imagine? Right arm in the air. Can it beat the first man? It can, but it can't beat the man in the middle of the box, unfortunately. And the ball will be continuing to play out from the back. Let's see what some people are saying in the chat box. Kofi says, prejudice is not racism, but it's still down to a level of education and exposure to other cultures, and people's education demonstrates the links between different cultures. Interesting point, Drew.
He's like, I actually got into this discussion 2 days ago, and so this is something that I'm ignorant about. There's a lot of people who are from Scotland that use the term racism in terms of how they're treated by the English. To me, that's not racism. To me, that's prejudice, because if you're Scottish and you're English, you're the same race. You're both white. So therefore, it's not racism.
White English and white Scottish. Yes,
yeah. But so to me, that's prejudice. Racism is entirely different. Racism to me,
So you've got a white English guy like me and a white Scottish person. If their comment was made, you would say that's prejudice rather than racism.
Correct. Yeah, because you're not commenting on a different race. You're still discriminating. That's without.
It's still wrong. We should point out. We're not saying it's not wrong.
It's still discrimination, but it's not racism because you're the same race. You're not judging based off someone else's, the color of the skin, or the fact that they just don't look like you or whatever. So yeah.
Interesting point. Contentious point then is that. So we've just said there that if you have a white English guy, white Scottish guy, and one makes a negative comment about the fact that they are from that country, and nothing to do with the color of their skin or their race, we say that it's important to point out that it's not racism, that's prejudice. But is the punishment the same? Should a punishment for a comment made like that be the same as? Say,
I think it should be. Any form of discrimination has to be handled harshly, because I don't think there's any room for any amount of. Yeah, and for me, I think this is one of the arguments that a lot of people have against things like me talking about racism, for example, is that we're trying to make it all about Black people. It's like, no, it's like I'm against any amount of discrimination on any level. It doesn't have to just be about Black people. It's anything. It could be, for example, it could be like if you and Owen had a row and Owen said something to you that was prejudice, I would come down on Owen as hard as if someone else said something to me about me being Black.
Just because you didn't have to get that tattoo for England not winning the
final. No, I think the punishment should be the same across the board. It's got to be severe. It has to be harsh. There's got to be some semblance of education involved off the back of it, or else you're never going to make any amount of headway. It's got to be baby steps. You can't make long strides first. You got to go one little step at a time. You got to start somewhere.
I promise I think you may have misheard what Drew was saying. I just want to address this. He says, I disagree with that point from Drew. Prejudice should be treated the same.
That's what I said.
That's what Drew said.
Yeah.
It says, I'm Black and I live in an all Black nation, but there's a lot of discrimination and it looks exactly like I assume.
Yeah, and just to repeat that promise, I'm sorry if we had a misunderstanding, but for me, because I still deal with prejudice and racism in the Black community in the U.S. because I'm a lighter skinned Black person, whereas darker skinned Black people sometimes take issue with that. And then I deal with issues with that in my own country as well. So I agree with you, we actually do agree. It's just there was a miscommunication between what I was saying and what you heard. But we're on point. So
do you think that part of the problem is as well, especially over here in the UK and Ireland, because one thing I'll say 100% is that banter. I know we hate that word, but it is a very, very real thing, especially when let's talk about myself and you, Tom, or some of the other boys in the chat with me and Wayne. There is often sort of like banter over nationalities and stuff, and stereotypical Irish things that Irish people do and that English people do and Scottish people do. That does happen in the mainland UK and Ireland quite often.
It is 2-0 Hibernian, unless this is going to be offside. Just let me touch on this very quickly, Owen, before we carry on.
No worries.
Cross comes in from the right-hand side. It's headed back across, and it's just bundled in at the back post there. Hibernian 2-0 up. Owen, you're probably just about to see this happen. Talk me through
I've just seen it. No, it's a nightmare, a defensive nightmare. Well, that's it. Send that set
Was
piece
it
back,
Rekic?
back
It
to
was
City.
Rekic, yeah.
Send that set piece coach back to City. He's a nightmare. No.
So corner comes in from the right-hand side. It goes over the top of everyone. El Neni is beaten in the air, and there is literally no one at the back post. Like, absolutely no one. Aparte actually steps up out of that position because he was on the back post. He steps up to go with the line as it comes in for the second ball. But, yeah, I mean, they called for offside. There is no VAR if it was ever offside, but some really poor defending there from Arsenal. It is 2-0. I need to change the score on the screen. Sorry, Owen, carry on with what you were saying.
Oh, no. So essentially the point I was trying to make is that, is it problematic that we do banter over that, or are we going to PC in terms of saying that we have to root stuff like that out? Because for me, Andrew, maybe you can speak from what it's like over in the States and stuff regarding race and people joking and stuff like that. But there's a very, very clear definition over having a joke with a friend and some of the stuff we're seeing on the social media platforms with our players.
Sorry, Tom, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You go first, mate.
Oh, thanks, buddy. So for me, I always have like a clear delineated line about who can cross it and when. Like sorry, Tom, I hate to bust your bubble, but my actual best friend, you're like 3. No, so yeah, my actual best friend, I've known him since we were 15, so I've known him a few decades. We'll just
that's us too. That's us too, Tom. We've got friendship with
Yes. You've just been overtaken.
and he, if you didn't know that we weren't best friends, you would hear some of the things that he says when we joke, and he'd be like, and you're just like, how do you tolerate that? It's because he's my best friend, and he's like, we joke about things all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can still, but everyone sets their own boundaries. If someone I didn't know said the things that Elliot says to me, I would literally just beat the absolute shit out of them. You know what I mean? But like, he's my best friend. We joke around. Like, that's
it's an interesting discussion, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, and it's like, we were talking about the difference between, say, prejudice and racism, and what we were talking about there. And say, if Owen said something that would be, if he was saying it in a negative way with the intention of hurting me, of insulting me, a British connotation from my perspective. I mean, just saying something about drinking tea or eating fish and chips, just something that you associate with being British, right? And if that was said in a negative way, but if you're saying that,
what'd you have for dinner?
I had fish cakes. That's not. I wouldn't say fish cakes is a British stereotype at all. But I don't know. I did have fish for dinner, so if it's just that's being clipped. In terms of that kind of joke, yeah. Or Mint says, or something about the Queen, like those types of things. It is an interesting point of view. So, say, Drew, like a conversation happens where you say the thing that your friend is saying to you. Say someone overhears that conversation and they hear what that person says to you. They're not your friend. They're not that person's friend, but they've overheard that and they've taken offense to it because they think what the person has said to you, even though it's said in a joking way, is racist or prejudiced or however you want to put it. How does the line fall on the situation like that?
So if that situation happened to me, what I would do is I would just explain to the person, like, this is my best friend. Like, him and I draw the lines about what I allow him to get away with and what I don't. And it doesn't mean I allow him to get away with everything. It just means that there are things that he'll say, because I know him. I know he's like, for example, like, so you guys have, like, you know, the stereotypical comments would be like things like tea and crumpets and shit like that. We say stuff like that to joke, but for like opposite banter. But if someone to me in the US would the typical jokes for against, like, you know, someone like me would be things about like fried chicken and watermelon and stuff like that. So if Elliot makes like a fried chicken joke, I'm always going to laugh. If some random stranger, like if I go into the grocery store and some random person was like, oh, I'm sorry, the fried chicken is on that aisle, I would be like, what the fuck? Excuse me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, because I know what they mean, you know, that, because that's an assumptive thing about Black people in the US, that we all eat and love fried chicken. And the secret is we all do really like fried chicken, but so do everybody else, not just Black people. Everybody likes fried chicken. That's the thing. Everybody likes fried chicken. It's not a black thing. It's just been made into a black thing.
I don't
So,
know.
See, to your point, Tom,
Term.
Very quickly, by the way, Pepe's missed a penalty. Just letting you know. We completely missed that. Pepe missed a penalty. Sorry, guys. We're in a very serious conversation right now. Football review. I mean, Arsenal are 2-0 down. You may have realised we've gone on a different kind of tangent of this conversation.
Yeah, that's fine, Term. No, but in that scenario, Tom, of say, for example, Drew and his mate were out having a drink and his mate said something in a jokey fashion and somebody else took offense to. I'm sorry, but I've been in this situation myself with on podcasts with people getting offended on my behalf. If you aren't the target of the joke, you have no right to be offended on the behalf of somebody else. So I think I think that's the distinction of where the line lies between racism. If you're targeting a complete group of people as a whole, then that's not okay. But if it's between one person and another, then you've got no right to be offended on behalf of somebody else.
Yeah, and that's part of. Someone just said it in a Pedro just said it in the chat. Context is everything, and Tom's a massive context fan now. So and that buzzword for Tom. But no, it's true. But like, and to fair point, if Elliot and I are at the bars, person whoever I don't know is over here, and Elliot says that's cool because you all love fried chicken, and that person heard it. I could understand their reaction of, and if they're black as well, then I can understand why they would be offended, at least initially before I explain.
Right. If
he said, "Oh, don't worry, just because you like fried chicken," that could easily just then it's directed at me. It kind of leaves out the gray area. Yeah, there's the context. So no, that's very, very true. So, like, I can also admit that I've been offended for people in public and when I've heard something, but I don't address it because I'm not gonna put myself out there and look like an idiot if I was wrong about assuming about what the dynamic is. You can't, so a lot of it can be reactionary at times.
Yeah, Jared says, I think both context and intent are really important to consider.
Yes, intent. Thank you, Jared. Intent is also, also very, because you can tell if someone's saying it as a joke or if they're saying it to weaponize the term or phrase or the sentence or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah. Just let me drop in here. Obviously, we are watching the game. Well, me and Owen are. Drew's been sitting here for 75 minutes, been unable to actually get a stream up as the first.
So we're having a good old chat.
So we're having a good chat about some really important points, which did start off at halftime when Owen asked me specifically how I felt about the whole situation with the English fans and a proportion of them. I'm saying the word proportion now rather than minority because I just think that just understates the amount of people that actually were racist towards the penalty takers that missed. And as we say, we lost quite a few listeners who are watching it, but it's glad to see that some of you guys are picking up with that and you're sticking around with us. So thank you ever so much, everyone that is tuning in. If you could drop a like on the video and leave a comment when this is finished, I'm sure that there will be some people maybe disagree with what we're saying, but as always, it's all about opinion and always about having these important discussions. And I've said this time after time after time. Someone like myself, a white guy, I feel it's important that white people are not afraid to talk about the racism that exists in this world, and it's something that I'm very much an advocate of trying to get that point across, and I'm hoping that we are doing that in the correct way. I'm sure that we'd be told if we wasn't, so yeah, fingers crossed it's coming across good for you guys in the chat box. You're enjoying this first ever watch along as Arsenal are getting battered. I mean, I can't imagine that we'd have it going off on so many tangents if there was a Premier League game. Just to bring it back to the football ever so briefly, Arsenal obviously are losing this game 2-0, and it is a situation where it does look like it's going to be a pretty embarrassing. I don't know if embarrassing is even the right word because of the context, and we always talk about context of the situation. Drew, is it embarrassing to lose this game 2-0 against Hibs in the first preseason game?
No, I don't like. I don't. Oh God, I don't care. Like, and maybe I have a bias because of like my history, maybe, but like. When I see preseason, I just don't care. There comes a point in the preseason where maybe the result matters more. When you get closer to the actual season, you want to see performances. Yes. In the first preseason fixture, when you're using no one that's going to be starting. I just don't care. You know, like again, context just for you, Tom. So there you go.
Yes, thank you, mate. That's always
You're
appreciated.
welcome, buddy.
Owen?
Well, put it like this: the one concern I would have over this is that whilst I agree with Drew, and we just missed there again, but whilst I agree with Drew in that the majority of the team in the first half won't be starting, I think there's a fair few here in the second half that likely will be staking a claim for a first team place. So, Mikel Arteta will not have sent these guys out onto the pitch with the instruction of it doesn't really matter if he's win or lose. I think that's not in the nature of a person like Mikel Arteta. So put it like this: I think it's always better to win these games than lose them. So it's not ideal, but in the grand scheme of things, is it going to completely impact Arsenal's season and crumble us? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. It's also good to see that Omari Hutchinson and Jack Henry Francis have both come onto the field recently to get their first kind of senior debut, if you want to call it that, in pre-season, but first kind of real minutes with the first team players. So that's some good signs. Hector Bellerin also came on in the second half for 30 minutes off for Cedric. Interesting that he didn't come on at half-time with the others. And some people described Willian as maybe a little overweight, is maybe the correct way to say it, when they looked on the pitch. I don't know if that's a bias because we're not, but some people said the similar things about Bellerin, that both Bellerin and Willian not looking particularly fit at the moment.
Everyone's looking very cuddly.
Very cuddly. Oh yeah. It's an interesting situation that we see ourselves in here with 2-0 down to Hibernian, obviously playing a lot of the kids and a fair few youngsters. Pepe has missed a penalty. We've hit the bar from, I think, 2 free kicks in this game now. So there has been clear-cut chances that we have not been able to take. And I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of people in the chat box and, of course, watching plenty of other channels that are losing their minds. I am fairly calm about this game. I am not concerned about this result in the slightest. I'm going to be joining lead judges after this game as well for more conversations, where I imagine the conversation may be slightly different, and I'm looking forward to that. But we'll wait and see. Lacazette with a decent ball over the top into the box, can't find his target. Partey's going to pick it up here on the edge. Lacazette's going to play the ball. Nice ball to Bella on the edge of the box. Cross back in. We're going to get a goal here. We are. It is 2-1. And that is Emile Smith-Rowe on the left-hand side, finishing off Hector Bellerin's fantastic cross. Really good finish from the man that will be going to Aston. No, I'm only joking. That will be signing a new contract with the club. Good finish from him. But yeah, it's good to see him getting some minutes, some really good work from some of the youngsters around the edge of the box as well. And Emile Smith-Rowe being the example. Partey with a great pass to Lacazette with an even better pass to Bellerin. Cross comes in, looped over the box. Hibernian defenders can't cope with it, and Smith-Rowe comes in at the back post to finish that on the half volley. I mean, Drew, where does Smith-Rowe play for you this season? Because we've seen him play kind of a lot shifted out to the left-hand side because he was playing alongside Martin Odegaard, of course. But where does the Smith play for you next season?
I'm gonna try to not overanalyze as usual. I'll keep it simple. Sure. I think no matter what, I think we'll be in the center of the park. If we do 4-3-3, you assume he might be like the 8-10 hybrid. If it's 4-2-3-1, he's going to be the 10. I feel like Pepe came on so strong last season, out on that left hand side instead of the right, and Saka's done so well on the right. I think that could be your front three behind the striker right there. Pepe, ESR, and Saka, and then whatever striker you want to use. And then hopefully Martinelli can come in as another maybe center forward option or on the left and rotate with Pepe. So I think he has to start. I know a lot of people may have wanted Odegaard back, but I didn't even want Odegaard in the first place. I'd rather. And I know why. Like you worried about his injury record, but for me, I think ESR has to start. I think he's up there with Saka. Those two have to be first choice options. I know they're young, but they've proven they can hack it. They've proven they not just they can hack it. They can influence matches, big matches, and they had a budding relationship between the two of them plus Lacazette, and you want to see that flourish. And it might not be Lacazette long term, but if you get Smith-Rowe and Saka week in, week out performing and having that bond on the pitch, we're going to be all the better for it later on. So yeah, for me, I think that's where he should be playing. So
I see Carol's comment in the chat. Oh my god, just in lead judges on another channel. Tom, good luck with the chat. That's going to be fun. Make sure you tune into Lead Judges TV at 8:00, and we're joining him and Dan Potts and Harry Simeon to talk about this. I look to bring the level-headed. This game doesn't bloody matter, guys. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, interesting one. Go on, Owen.
But no, I was just going to mention the fact that I think Nicola Pepe actually looks quite lively since he has come on. He's really trying to sort of grab this game by the scruff of the neck, if you would say that about a preseason friendly. But the fact that he finished last season quite strong, and now he looks to still have that bit between his teeth, that it could be a big positive going into the season because. Yeah. I think this is going to be the season that defines whether Nicola Pepe was a waste of money or a decent purchase at 72 million.
Decent purchase at 72 million. Is that the sentence? Yeah, it's just it really is going to be. You can never say that Pepe. I just can't see Pepe ever justifying that price tag after the first 2 seasons, but I can see him really trying. Emil Smith-Rowe has just done an. Is it Emil Smith? I think it was. Has done an amazing run. I'm watching this, by the way, on my phone because the computer just didn't work. So I've got a tiny screen. Lacazette's definitely fouled him in the box there, and that is going to be a free kick to Hibs. Again, I haven't seen any of the clips. If you have got any clips of people losing their minds, I would love to see them. So please send them over to a DM at the Gooner Talk TV on Twitter if you have got any clips to show me.
Christ.
Jesus.
Sorry.
They're going to copyright me, Drew. You know what they're like.
I just realized I could have been watching on my phone. Oh, well.
Why have you not been? Oh, it's the 85th minute. Oh, this is why he gets paid the least of all the TGT crew. I'm joking. They get paid nothing. They get paid in my friendship. That's what they get.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So this is a bit of a funny topic because we already sort of know one person anyway on the panel's answer to this here.
The box, right hand side, crossed into the edge, wasn't able to find its target. Sorry, Owen, go on.
Oh, you're good. With the launch of the new home kit coming this week, how do we feel about the protest of not purchasing any merchandise from the club?
I feel awful about it. I feel absolutely dreadful. No, let me answer it seriously because it is an important discussion and I shouldn't mock it because I know there are a lot of people out there that are refusing to buy the kit, and I have absolute respect for it, despite my little outburst there. But for me, it's
sorry.
Stop playing video.
No, it's a match. Quiet. Go on.
For me, if you want to go and buy a kit, buy a kit. If you want to go and protest the Cronkies, go and protest the Cronkies. If you want to go and tell someone that they cannot categorically go and buy a shirt because that means they're hypocrites and clearly they don't want the Cronkies out, you're talking a lot of rubbish. That's where I sit on this. Is you cannot tell someone what they can and cannot do in regards to how they want to support the team. I had this discussion with Hugh. I don't know if you watched the clip that he uploaded onto his channel with me and him had that discussion. But it boiled down to basically he disagreed with the fact of me buying kits. I then pointed out that I've probably spent a lot less on kits than he has going to matches across the last season. Because I didn't go to any, whereas he went to a few, and he had that admittance, and he told me, I was like, yeah, fair enough, you're right there. But in terms of the concept of someone who chooses not to spend anything, if you don't want to spend anything, that's your choice, that's your decision. But don't go and berate people for choosing to do something different. And this is how I connect to the club. It's by buying a shirt. I don't care where the money goes in the sense of Arsenal. It's to the club or to the Cronkies, whatever. It's my way of supporting the club. And, if you don't like it, I don't want you to tell me. So that's about it. Drew?
I mean, usually I don't buy kits, but for what
I was wearing the last home shirt.
This is, to be fair, this is actually a gift, so I didn't buy this. Not that I'm sad that I got it, but normally just for one reason or another, like I just kind of feel like getting merchandise it doesn't define if you support the club or not. It has no bearing on it. But I think also I just didn't like a lot of the kits. I'm a fan of the older kits. Like I stopped buying kits past a certain point. But now with the work that they did this year, I think I'm probably getting all of them. And I don't think it has anything to do with ownership. Like, you know me, I'm on the fence about the Cronkies. They get some things wrong, they get some things right. Like, I'm not Me buying a kit doesn't mean I support them. And also, for starters, like we hash out our deal with Adidas across multiple years anyway, and the money is guaranteed. So me buying the kit doesn't change anything about ownership anyway. Same thing with you. So yeah, if you want to buy the kit, go buy it. You know, if you love this club as much as we all do, you should want to show that any way you can. So go buy the merchandise as much as you want. Simple as that.
Let me just give a quick shout out to this super chat, and then Owen, you can finish what you were going to say on it. Gunners Forever says, I don't understand why we are sticking with Arteta after we finished 8th for 2 seasons under him. Why not try for someone like Conte? Why do we have to struggle for the first 6 weeks of every season and then think of change? Well, I mean, Arteta's only been in charge for one start of the season, to be fair. But I take your point, and as I said at the end of last season, I thought the right decision would have been to change coach. But we've not done that, and now we will just see how the start of the season goes. Go on, Owen.
Just going back to the kits. It's really funny because I did watch that discussion you had with Hugh around the kits, and I think there was some. It wasn't Hugh, but
it was a bit tense.
It was tense. It was. And I think you made some very, very good points. And with all due respect, like Hugh, he's a very fucking intelligent guy, but some of his points didn't make a lot of sense. But there was even some people, I think, in the chat, again, but once again, not Hugh, but some people in the chat recommending that people, if they want the kit, to go down unofficial avenues of
go and buy
the kit.
fake kits or fake channels or illegal routes. Yeah.
But it's like, and they were saying, so essentially what you want to do is not put your money into the pockets of Arsenal, but put your money into the pockets of God knows who what. Yes. You know, where that money's going, what it's funded. Yeah.
Other criminals is the best way to say it.
God knows, like, you know, some of those things, like all these unofficial things, that they're often money makers to fund criminal activity and stuff like that. So some of the counter arguments being put out by reputable people, once again, not you, but a lot of people on YouTube I've seen put that argument across, is just absolutely shocking, I think. And the way the payment deals for the kits are structured, the money's given up front, it does not impact the Cronkies whatsoever if you go out and buy a kit or not.
No, I think, I mean, correct me anyone if they think I'm wrong, but the kit deals, I'm pretty sure how they work is that they pay the club a hell of a lot of money to be the official kit manufacturer. And then most of the player sales, if not all of it, goes back to Adidas for when you buy a shirt. Most of that money will go back to them because they've already paid the club for it. I mean, I'm sure there's a percentage that will go towards the club because I know that, like, Messi basically pays for himself with the amount of shirt sales that he makes of Barcelona. But I mean, Drew, do you know anything financially about that? I'm sorry if you weren't listening because you were watching more videos.
I was on my phone. No, I was on my phone. No, I don't know anything other than that. Just, I don't even want to answer and speculate because I could just say something completely incorrect. But no. So just,
Yeah. Oh, who was that on the left-hand side? Was that Amari Hutchinson? Because if he did, he managed to keep the ball off from being a corner after a terrible pass from Lacazette really well. I mean, I have to say, the Pepe's not been too great since coming on. And I know that this is purely judged off this performance only, so don't take it like I'm being specific about certain players. But we have looked very disjointed. We haven't looked great. The final whistle has just blown, and Arsenal have indeed lost 2-1 to Hibs in their first pre-season match of the year. I'm only going to be able to stick around for a couple of minutes because I'm going to be joining Lee Judges on his channel very soon. But final thoughts, Drew, before we wrap up on that. I know you didn't really see much of it, but from what you heard, feelings about losing our first game of pre-season and the eventual meltdown that's going to come.
I mean, the meltdown already happened, but same thing. I just don't care about it. Like, you get to see some players you're probably not going to see this season for one reason or another. Again, it's about fitness. You're working towards what the goal is come match day one. We're not even remotely there yet. You can take positives and negatives. You hope you can at least. And then you just move forward. Like, again, I don't care that we lost. Bigger clubs than us lose preseason friendlies to smaller clubs than Hibs. So is what it is. You know what I mean? It has no bearing on anything else. So no, I'm glad they finally got to get a run out. We see how we go from there. I'm more excited about to see how we perform maybe in Orlando. I know I might be able to go, but I'm not quite sure yet. If I do, you'll be sure that Mike and I will send videos if I do go. So I'll let you know. But no, again, simple day out. We'll see how we go from there. But whatever, it is what it is. So.
Owen,
look, it's relatively unimportant as to what happens at the start of the season. Again, good to see people getting a run out. The one thing I would say, it probably reassures us as to what we want to see in terms of outgoings from the club over the rest of the window, with Willian very under par, Hector Bellerin very under par, numerous people in that side, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson. I think it highlights the amount of business that needs to be done between now and the closing of the window. So look, hopefully the next result will be slightly more positive. As you say, people, I think what might annoy people as well is the fact that they're paying money for this now as well. It isn't just a free thing.
That will be brought up. Yeah, 100%.
That might add some spite to the lack of a result. But look, relatively insignificant in terms of the rest of the season. So let's just wait and see how it pans out. Yes. Or tat out. That's
our biggest advice to you guys is do not overreact to this result. It means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing going forward. It's good to see the kids get a bit of a run out and performances. If we go into the first few games of the season and then we start losing like this, then you can start to panic. And fingers crossed we would have made quite a few more signings by then. So, you might have to take a few little bits of stick from fellow rival fans for a few days, but, it is what it is. And we'll see you guys tomorrow morning for the 8 a.m. show. You can see me now trying to deal with some of the hyperbole, I'm sure, on Lee Judge's TV. But other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you guys as always. And you too. Owen, a massive thank you for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it, fella.
Pleasure, yeah. And chat box was absolutely brilliant tonight as well. There's some very, very good level-headed comments.
Yes, everyone that stays, you're brilliant. Drew, always a pleasure, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me. And again, thanks for the chat. Thank you for your interaction. Thanks for actually listening to me rant on about matters unrelated to football, but still related to football. And always, again, thank you for supporting everything that Tom and the rest of us do with it. So, yeah, thank you.
Cheers, guys. Let us know in the comment section how you think these watch-alongs have gone. As you can see, we do go off on fairly a lot of tangents. It's what we do. It's what we talk about. Let us know what you thought of it. It's probably the same style that it would be during the season. Obviously, we would be watching the games with a lot more focus when they actually matter. But still, it will be very chat-laden if we go and do that. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. It's been a pleasure to speak to you as always. And as always, up the Arsenal.